We are ready.
No,
Call the meeting to order.
okay.
All right. So we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To
flag
the flag
To the flag of
of
the
the
United
United States
States of America
and to the
the
republic
republic for which
for which
it
it stands,
stands
one
one
nation,
nation,
God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with
with
liberty
liberty and
and
justice.
justice for all.
That was choral reading at its finest. Okay, roll call.
It looks like it's hard to find everybody in this list. I think we have everyone.
Okay, so we're gonna have
But
to,
we got to do the roll call where
My address,
everybody says where they're from, where
my
they're at.
address.
You don't have to say what address, but what town.
Okay.
So, Mr. Hamel,
here in Highland.
I'm here also in Highland. Mrs. Frederick,
I'm here in Highland.
Mrs. Cooper,
I'm here in Highland.
Mr. Howe,
Here in Highland, Michigan, and proud of it.
Mrs. Lewis,
I'm here in Highland too.
and Mr. Salvia.
Highland, present.
Okay, we're all here.
All right, so I'll do, we'll need an approval of the agenda. So somebody want to move to approve?
I would move to approve the agenda as presented.
Support Salvia.
Moved and supported, vote please.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mrs. Frederick,
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Salvia,
Yes.
Mrs. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Hamel.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, the next item is consent agenda approval. Somebody like to make a motion?
I would move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support Lewis.
Okay, moved and supported, vote please.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mrs. Frederick,
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Salvia,
Yes.
Mrs. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Hamel.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, I get to make the monthly announcement that we're gonna be closed on February 15th in observance of President's Day. Okay, so
Can I ask a question?
sure.
Tammy, I guess, or Jen, how's it going at the office?
It's going good. We're collecting taxes till February 16th. And then we can collect late taxes until March 1st.
Okay.
Not everybody probably has heard, but I had COVID this month and I've been at home. I am
Oh,
clear
geez.
now. And, but my office is working one person per day according to the state guidelines that everyone who can work from home is working from home. So we are staffed one person a day and it's going pretty good.
How's the public reaction been? Pretty good overall? I mean, they understand?
We have signs out front that say the building is closed to the public. Please stay in your car and call us our number.
Okay.
Some people call and we just say, "Go, yep, our lobby is clear. Go ahead and come in." Some people just come in. And so it's been mixed, but it's fine.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I just was curious how it was going. Thanks.
Yep, everybody's masked up, so when they come in, so that's working good. All right, so I'm gonna read off a little thing I wrote here. So I'm sure that the participants are here to comment on the board discussion about medical marijuana facilities and licensing. So at this time, it'd be greatly appreciated if those who are here to give their opinion would defer and instead take the time to listen to the board conversation first, and then respond to what you hear with an email documenting your position. All emails will be collected together for public viewing. There will be no public comment during the board's discussion of the topic. And instead of waiting for the discussion, anybody who's gotten on us and doesn't want to have to wait till the end of the meeting to hear this discussion, This is being recorded and will be on our YouTube site by tomorrow afternoon. So,
Mr. Supervisor,
yes,
did you say that you wanted the people to hold their comments until after we talked about it?
I'm asking that they defer if they would.
Would it make any sense for us to hear their comments before we talk about it?
I think the reason I'm asking this is that I've gotten a lot of questions, and all of those questions will be answered, and some of the concepts or thought processes are, I think, preemptive. They're not, I don't think they really know why we're doing what we're doing. So that's what I'm going to try and explain here.
And if,
Understand?
So,
and Mr. Chairman, could I chime in as well?
yes,
I do not want this to be interpreted that we are denying the ability to make public comment tonight. If anybody really wants to, it is certainly a possibility for you to make a public comment tonight. But I think you will see that this is not going to be a decision that's made tonight. And we just need to kind of chat about it as a board. So if you want to make a public comment, you're certainly welcome.
all right, so I guess
Mr. Hamel,
yeah,
so one thing you could consider, you don't have to, and you've already approved your agenda, but I'm not hung up on that. The next order of business is public comment. That's on your agenda.
correct.
To allow for folks the opportunity to comment after you talk, but do it under the public comment portion, you could move public comment for this agenda to the end of the meeting if you wanted to go that route.
That's feasible to do, and I don't have any opposition to that. All I'm saying is that I think that when we're done with our conversation, that those that are here to, we're not trying to stop people from saying how they feel or how they believe, but I think that if each individual were to put their words into an email, then the email can become a permanent public record as well, and can then be compiled with all of the other documentation that we'll probably be doing along this process for who knows how many other meetings. So what I was trying to get at is if you don't want to wait around till the end of the meeting, you can actually wait till tomorrow, listen to what we have to say, and then use that as a tool to craft probably a better crafted comment, knowing what the topic is about. And so you'll have all of the conversation that we might have with our board members, the fire marshal, the sheriff, and the attorney. And so that's an option. So if somebody adamantly wants to make a statement, that's fine. I'll take that. But keep in mind that every 3 minutes, if we've got 15 or 20 people that want to make a comment, we're going to be hours down the road before we even get to the meeting. I could put it towards the end if everybody wants to do that, and then everybody can wait. It's not very far in terms of the process we've got to go through to get there, but it's up to those that want to can listen to it later, do an email, and then you don't have to sit through the rest of the meeting. You can do it at your leisure. So anybody would like to do that, I'm giving that option to you now, so you don't have to sit around and wait. So at this point, we have public comment. Is there anybody that feels they need to speak now? And if you want, in fact, do I need to make a motion to move that, Gary? I'll tell you what I'll do.
Yes, you would have to amend the agenda to move public comment to wherever you want, or you can just have your normal public comment period right now, 3 minutes per speaker.
Mr. Chairman, I see a chat comment by Randy Root. I'd like to comment before the discussion.
How much is that worth? No, I'm just kidding, Randy. I have no problem with that. Here's what I think I'd like to do. I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to allow for a public comment just prior to the item number, let me find it here. Item number 10M, which is a discussion of opt-out in marijuana facilities in Highland. Or Randy, would you prefer to just go ahead now to get it in for the most number of people that would be here? Once again, it's recorded, so.
Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to go ahead. I don't, it's not for me to, weigh in
Hamel?
on whether
Hold
I'm
on.
for it or against it, but I had some information I just wanted to share that I think would be pertinent to the discussion.
Mr. Hamel,
Yes,
you made a motion, no one seconded it. So does that die?
does anybody want an additional public comment or do you want to do it now? Okay,
I'd support an additional public comment. I think that might, people then could decide at that point if they really need to weigh in. Like I said, they might understand everything we're saying or might clear up a lot of problems or a lot of, not problems, but a lot of questions.
so Randy.
Second.
Okay, seconded, vote please.
Mrs. Frederick,
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Salvia,
Yes,
Mrs. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Clarification. So are we going to keep public comment now for other issues and then add a public comment? Is that the
Yes.
intent?
Yes,
Okay, yes.
Mr. Hamel.
yes.
Okay,
Okay, so Randy, in this case, I think if you want us to all remember what you said, this gives you an opportunity just before the commentary. Is that what you'd like to do?
Sure, that'd be fine.
Okay. All right, so has anybody got any public comment at this time?
I do. Rose.
Okay, and that is Julie Gleason, Comstock, is that right?
Yes,
Hi, Julie, how are you?
doing very well, thank you. Good,
Right.
good snowy evening.
So how can we help you with a public comment?
I wanted to speak in support of the Dunleavy and Leonard Lake Special Assessment District just for 1 minute to thank you all for taking that up again. This is our third or fourth time for having the SAD for the lakes, and I've personally been involved in it every time, going door to door, this time of course with masks and sanitizer while we sign the petition. So people are very excited about it. We have a lot of new neighbors, and I hope that there is strong support for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Anybody else have a public comment?
Ms.
I do.
D'Ambrosi, go ahead.
Yes. I just want to comment on the community sharing building. It's more of a question. I know I've been following it all along from the time that we decided that we we're going to donate the property. And I might have missed this before, you can correct me, but are the other communities that this affects, have they pledged any extra? I mean, we're giving a piece of land. I know that, technically in the books, we're not losing money, but this community sharing, benefits more than just Highland. I mean, so I'm just curious to see what's White Lake doing, what's, Milford doing, that kind of thing.
Well, I'll start, and then maybe if Dave Bell or something has a comment, they can add into that. Right now, what we're at is community sharing, and the different supervisors will have to reconvene and then talk about how the other communities can engage to be able to help out. And that may be giving more some more money or some other resources to community sharing. So that's something that'll be a future discussion, but we can keep you posted on that. So
Great. Thank you, Rick.
Dave Bell, do you have anything on that?
I think you covered the points. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think you covered the points. Rose, to your point, we do have a fundraising committee going, and we're just starting to get traction as we head into the spring on that subject. And a lot of things we're going to need help with other communities will be later in the summer or in the fall. I do get emails from Don Green quite often about suggestions and providing help from Milford Township. So we're in contact with them, and we haven't forgot about them and they haven't forgot about us.
Great. Thanks, Dave.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, any other public comment?
KT man, whoever that is, you may. go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry, I should probably change my name on there. This is Scott Green. Mr. In mine, just a couple of procedural questions, really. So, Rick, when you mentioned the item M a little while ago, you said medical marijuana.
Correct.
Is that a miscommunication? Because are you talking about adult use or are you talking about medical marijuana?
Medical marijuana.
So you're going to opt in or out of medical marijuana. Adult use will still continue to be opted out.
Well, you're talking about recreational versus medical.
Well, I think the law says adult use for the marijuana, right? It's not the marijuana law, right? It's I think the correct terminology is adult use.
The only thing we're going to be discussing is medical marijuana.
Okay, all right. And then second question, more procedural. I know sometimes when some of the board members are talking or voting, they'll say aye or something like that, and they don't come up on the screen. So I'm not sure who's talking. So if they could just say their name before they talk, it would be helpful. Make sense?
Well, I call out the names when we're voting, so whoever responds would be that person.
Yeah, a little while ago, your picture wasn't coming up on the screen. So when you voted, you said, well, I vote something. And
Yes, right.
I didn't know who it was because you're in, I mean, I know your voice well enough to know that, but not everybody does. So procedurally, we didn't know who that was because your
Okay,
picture didn't.
so yeah, I can identify myself when I
Thank
vote.
you. Yep. That's it.
All right. Any other comments?
Hamel. Mr. Hamel,
Yes,
if I may make a comment.
sure.
This is Anthony Raimondo. I live at 2148 North Hickory Ridge Road. Keeping it less than 3 minutes. I know we have a full agenda, but did want to say how much I appreciate seeing everyone's face without a mask on. So I do value the Zoom and technology, able to meet as a group and as a community. Being that it's the first day of Black History Month, I just was curious to see if the township had any planned activities or events to celebrate Black History Month and the accomplishments of Black Americans, and also pose the question to the board, what is being done to denounce racism in Highland Township?
All right, that's a question that, as a general rule, I'm supposed to give ask for public comment and not comment. So that's a tough one to call on. I would have to say that because of this COVID thing, we have not had a really good opportunity where any of us in the office spend much time engaging each other. So that the Black History thing is something that has not been a topic of discussion, and I guess it's something that slipped past us. I'd be remiss on that. What was the other thing you asked about, Anthony?
What is being done in Highland Township to denounce racism? I believe Mr. Selva had mentioned before the meeting started about flags in the township. So I see other flags in the township as well, and didn't know if there was anything being done to persuade those not to represent those flags in the township and to fly the American flag that's lit at night. And in other ways, what is the Highland Township doing to denounce racism?
Okay, I would say that I can't answer that question because I'm not sure how Highland Township can and should be able to do anything about the flags, number one. I believe, Gary, if you want to comment on that, it's a matter of freedom of speech. And I agree with you. Sometimes it's hard for me to drive around and look at some of the stuff out there. So, but there's not anything that I believe we can personally do to affect that. Is that correct, Gary?
Well, so the question, I mean, asked is what has Highland Township done to denounce racism? The answer is, I mean, to my knowledge, I sit in every one of your meetings and there's been no official township board action on that front. So the answer would be no. If somebody thinks the township should weigh in on that, they are free to submit something in writing to the township, ask the township board to consider it at a future meeting. That would be the constructive way to approach that.
Thank you.
Can I chime in on that? We have had a couple discussions, the civility conversations. We've had a couple community dinners where we have had those conversations and talked about how to better communicate those kinds of feelings. So I would hope that that would be an ongoing thing that we would do in the future. But of course, since we can't gather together, we haven't done those. And actually the last one was by Zoom last spring. And we met with Stephen Henderson and Nolan Finley to talk about how they encourage their friendship despite their not only political differences, but their family backgrounds. So good conversations.
All right. Thank you, Anthony. Anything else?
Thank you.
Question for Anthony. Anthony, were you referring to the military flags or just some other kind of flag?
Just flags in general that represent racism.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome. Any other public comment? All right, then I'm going to close the first public comment. We'll move on to the next item, which ironically, Julie, we're going to take your conversation and add it into this part for the public hearing, unless you'd like to say more. So we're going to start the public hearing at 6:53. And this is a public hearing for Dunleavy and Leonard Lake Special Assessment District for the control of weeds in Dunleavy and Leonard Lakes and related services. So anybody have a public comment on that? Now would be the time. So Julie, do you want to say any more or just say ditto?
I hope there remains strong support. When we went around the lakes during this COVID time, of course, very carefully, there was stronger support than there had ever been. And I think recognition that we all want to look towards the future together. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any other comments? Okay, we'll close the public hearing at 6:54. That part was easy. Now comes the part that's going to take a little bit more work. And I don't know why this one has been so difficult, but so we're going to move on to pending business. And the first item is going to be resolution 21-02. And that's to proceed with the Dunleavy and Leonard Lakes Special Assessment District for the control of weeds in Dunleavy, Leonard Lakes and related services. So Gary, do you want to?
If I may address the board. Today was the last public hearing in the normal special assessment process. And you have before you what is traditionally the last resolution, which confirms the special assessment role and makes provision for how that a special assessment is going to be paid. The resolution posted with this agenda provides that each of these properties subject to the assessment is going to have a total assessment of $1,175, payable at $235 per year for 5 years. And that much, I have no issues with that. That's been calculated by someone else.
That's not it.
The resolution has 3 resolved paragraphs. The third one is called "Be It Further Resolved." There are problems with the language in there in terms of how it allows one of those 235 per year installments to actually be missed and then paid off over 4 more years. That is wrong and is inconsistent. What I'd suggest that if the board is inclined to confirm the special assessment role, that it do so with modifications of that language. In other words, I'm looking at a resolution you folks adopted on February 11 of 2015 for the Lower Pettibone Lake Special Assessment District Lake Weed Control Project. And that resolution differs from what you have in the following respects. As far as that 1,175 total assessment, in the earlier example, it says that may be paid in full by a certain date. And in that case, it said April 1, and then it said, or it could be paid in 5 installments with the first one due April 1. I would suggest that applying that concept to this resolution, where it says, where we have the due date of the pay in full or the first installment on May 1, as indicated, and then change the rest of it to match what was done in the Lower Pettibone Lake. I could make those revisions and provide those tomorrow morning. And if you were comfortable with that, you could act tonight and not have to come back to the board. The only other thing that I would suggest putting in would be confirmation that the lien that we have for special assessments is only for each individual installment. So that said, if you wanted to move forward, it would be to move to adopt the resolution approving the special assessment role. Excuse me. Too many pieces of paper. For the 2021-2025 Dunleavy and Leonard Lake Special Assessment District for the control of weeds in Dunleavy and Leonard Lakes and related services pursuant to 1954 Public Act 188 as amended, with revisions recommended by the township attorney to conform to the township board's prior resolutions on lake special assessments.
I'll make that the motion as read by our attorney.
I have a question. Would it
Can we
be,
get a second before we delve into discussion?
Support, Sylvia.
Okay.
Okay, now your question, Jennifer?
so it would be due May 1st, or would it be due September 14th? For no,
I'm looking at what has been, what is posted, and it says that the first installment is due May 1st. Under this approach, if that first installment is not paid by May 1st and remains delinquent as of September 1, then it's going to get put on the tax roll.
okay.
All right, so any other questions?
So you're gonna add, like in number 4 from Lower Pettibone, Gary, that it says, this is Cooper, by the way.
Yes.
The total special assessment of whatever is due to be paid in full on or before May 1st, or may be paid in 5 annual installments with the first installment due May 1st, and subsequent installments being due on February 14th, and
No.
it ends with on the
No.
winter tax bill.
No, there will be no references at all to February 14th.
So you're
What
not,
I will provide will say that you either pay it in full by May 1st, or you pay it in 5 annual installments, each of which is due on May 1st, starting in 2021. That if any installment is not paid when due and remains delinquent as of September 1, that installment goes on the tax bill.
so previously, we put some, either 4 or 5 of the installments on the winter tax bill. We normally have not billed separately in the past.
You may, if you want to simply, well, I don't know how you're going to fund in this special assessment. Is this to fund work for this year?
Yes, that's why the first one would be due May 1st.
Right, so I don't, how can it be due May 1st and put on the tax bill? I'm not following that.
It's completely spelled out in the Lower Pettibone resolution that you enclosed. And that's why I'm asking is, I just wanted to clarify. Because past practice was it was always on the tax bill. Isn't that what your intention is, Jen?
Yep, if it doesn't get paid, the first one by May 1st, it will just be added to the next winter tax bill.
Right, so if the first one doesn't get paid, there's 2 on the winter tax bill in 21.
Correct.
And then going forward, each year, they're on the winter tax bill.
So the statute says that you establish the date of the special assessments. And I'm quite certain it says that they're to be due on the same, on an annual basis on the same date going forward.
Well, the first one we're invoicing for. Normally it would have been on the winter tax bill already, but it wasn't decided by then.
Yeah, it's timing.
And we, at Highland Township, only put special assessments on the winter tax bill.
Okay, so I'm looking at the Lower Pettibone draft. It had the first payment due April 1 of 2015.
Correct.
Then it had the subsequent installments being due on February 14th, starting in 2016.
Yeah, Gary, I think the key is that you're missing the per parcel will be invoiced by the township.
First time, only the first one.
Right, so the first installment will be invoiced by the township with a due date of May 1st. The remainder of the special assessment shall be payable in 4 equal installments, the first of which shall be due and payable February 14th, 2022, which would be on the tax bill, right?
Correct.
Well, billed with the taxes, but it's not, if the installment is not due till February 14th, it's not a tax.
It's
And
not
if
a
it's
tax.
not paid, it can't be turned over as delinquent. And I mean, without, in my opinion, violating the statute, because the lien is only for an unpaid assessment. I mean, this Lower Pettibone deviates from what the statute describes in terms of the payments being due on the same date every year. I understand the township's objective is to only send out one bill.
Correct.
And then to put the subsequent bills someplace separate on the tax statement. But it's not a tax at that point. It's
not a tax, but none of the special assessments are a tax. Like we levy trash on the winter tax bill, and
as long as it's done in the same fashion as trash, that's fine.
Yeah.
But
and all the other lake boards are levied on the winter tax bill.
Or they show up on it.
Yes.
Yes. They're not levied like a tax. Sorry.
I'll make it read that way.
I have a question.
Begrudgingly.
If the subsequent installments are put on the tax bill, how can they be delinquent if they don't pay the entire tax?
No.
Or just a portion of the tax, a portion of the bill?
It would be my opinion that if you've billed a special assessment installment for the first time, and you use the tax bill as the method of billing it, and you've said that it's not due and payable until February 14th, the earliest that could become a lien on, and part of the taxes that have to be paid would be the following year. If it was still delinquent on September 1, then you can put it as part of and in the tax bill. You folks are using the tax bill to save some postage.
Yep.
But the downside is if somebody doesn't pay it, they can go delinquent for a lot longer before that can be turned over to the county as a delinquent tax and run the risk of losing their property. None of that's going to happen on this with a $235 a year.
And in the past, the county has always approved that special assessment if it was delinquent, and they paid it out of the revolving fund. So once they're on the tax bill, we weren't charging delinquent fees at all.
So
Okay.
We're diving way too deep into this. Sorry.
The practice is at variance from the statute, but it sounds like it's a variance in favor of the property owner. It's not.
Exactly.
And so in that event, I'm questioning who would challenge it if the township board is fine with it. What do you do with the 1% per penalty? If
We
somebody-
don't, except except for the first one. If they don't pay the first one by May 1st, we put it on with the interest.
I'm going to pose my question once again. If the next installment is attached to a tax bill and someone says, I don't want to pay that installment, can they pay a partial of the tax bill?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Joe, I think to add to your question, what you're maybe getting to is that if they refuse to pay that
Second installment.
that assessment, would that jeopardize their, be considered a delinquent tax bill? In other words, is that going to put them in a position where they could live
Yes.
at home? That's,
The bill wasn't paid in full.
is that
So
correct?
we could dive way deep into this.
Well,
And,
it's my opinion that the county shouldn't be paying the township when it turns that over as delinquent. It's my opinion the township shouldn't turn one of those over as delinquent because it's not a lien at that point. But my opinions, are, some people think they're not worth very much at all. So.
Okay, Julie, you're involved in this, so.
Yes, a very brief comment. I certainly respect everyone's opinion. Let me just say that in the 3 times that we've done this, that the process has been that it simply appears on the tax, whether it's the winter or summer bills. No one questions it, and it's worked very well. I would hope that we can proceed in that way. I understand that perhaps the importance of nudging it to another time with winter rather than summer, but taking it out of the way we've done it 3 times that's worked very well is probably not going to be very helpful. It has worked exceedingly well.
All right, so Gary, your suggestion be? I think my motion could be.
The language of your motion accommodates. I made reference to lower Pettibone, and that's what we focused on. We've now just dissected it. There will be a quiz.
So Gary, you'll just send us a version for tomorrow to review?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so now we've motion and second. How about a vote?
All right. Clerk Flowers is voting yes. Mr. Salvia,
Salvia, yes.
Mrs. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Howe says yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Cooper, yes.
Mrs. Frederick,
Frederick, yes.
Mr. Hamel.
Mr. Hamel, yes.
Motion carries.
We can do a pretty good job of beating the death out of stuff, I'll tell you. That one,
Deep dive.
Julie, tell your lake population that we appreciate their patience. And we really aren't that incompetent. We just seem to, somehow this one has just bounced us around. And I think it's maybe because we all lose, after 4 or 5 years, we lose our aggregate memory on how we did them the last time. Even if we pull paper out, we did it different than other times. So thank you for your patience and thanks for being residents of Highland. So we'll move on to the next item. Hope we can make this one a simple one. So this is resolution 21-03. It's the adoption of the Charter Township of Highland Parks and Recreation Master Plan for 2021 to 2025. I'll make a motion to approve.
Support Cooper.
Okay, moved and supported. Any questions? That was the dangerous question. Vote, please.
Mr. Salvia,
Salvia, yes.
Mrs. Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Mr. Howe,
Mr. Howe votes yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Cooper, yes.
Mrs. Frederick.
Frederick, yes.
Clerk Flowers votes yes. Mr. Hamel.
Supervisor Hamel votes yes.
All right.
All right, next one. This is an interesting one. Gary will go on with this. Oakland County, being the economic development group, has been trying to come up with a bunch of different ways to help restaurants and that to survive during this COVID situation. So the restaurants that have had drive-throughs like McDonald's and Burger King, they've been just blowing the numbers off. I mean, they're going gangbusters. But the restaurants who are only indoor operations and don't have drive-throughs have been closed. So this is an attempt, and of course, when it started, we had no idea when the state would say, okay, you can go open back up. And ironically, it turned out to be February 1st, which is today. But anyways, the county put together a program where they have $3 million to spend. And the idea behind it is that they are not just going to give money to restaurants. They're going to offer up some product. I'll try and so take you into this program overview. And what they want to do is, this is a picture of some of the thought process. If you look down at the lower level, you see these vinyl bubbles. And so they're promoting either using these things for outdoor dining. They've been using them in larger cities for a couple of years, actually. It takes an outdoor space and colder weather and makes them, depends on who you are, somewhat usable. So anyways, the thing that we're in what's called phase 2. Phase 1 was the first, went out in December. And so there were some communities that, like Milford, they took some, were given some resources to be able to use. So the eligible products for acquisition and reimbursement. Now, what that is that the county can't give this money to DDAs and other organizations to distribute it. So they require the township, city, villages, and townships to become the agent for distribution. So that means that there's a contract that each city, village, or township has to sign that says it agrees to a series of conditions, which pretty much puts all the liability on the township. If you want to, I think I'm straight on that one, aren't I, Gary? It's one of our typical county contracts. So anyways, what they've done is they've made available some product. They went out and they bought a bunch of stuff. They bought tents, they bought greenhouses, they bought propane refill programs, electrostatic sprayers. There's 53 communities that are eligible for this program. And each of the communities has an estimated value based on the number of restaurants that the county felt were, what would you call it, could use this program. So fast food restaurants that have drive-throughs and can handle a drive-through window, they're not eligible. So if you can see this list, I mean, there's sanitation products and on and on. Well, some of this stuff works great when you've got a downtown environment like maybe Royal Oak or even Milford. And if you've been through Milford, you'll notice that they've set up some of these things already. And those were from the first round. So, and Missy Dashovich is on with us, and she's the DDA director. And Missy and I were put in the position to try and make this happen ASAP. And of course, the application for it was supposed to be out on the 26th last week. It didn't come out, I think, until what, Thursday night or Friday morning last week. And so we have to go through and we have to determine what restaurants that we feel would be able to adapt to this. And then we had to contact them, and which we succeeded in doing. And it turns out there's really only 7 restaurants, 7 to 8 that were eligible, and only 3 of them are interested in the program. So it still means that we have, so here's the list of the 53 communities. And if you look, you'll see that Highland Township is eligible for, where did Highland go? Here's Highland is eligible for up to $36,739 in reimbursable dollars. So I believe that what'll happen is we have to pre-approve, or allow, I guess, Gary, what it is, they have to get the approval of the board to allow the supervisor to sign a contract that there's a draft of the contract attached in here, to sign the draft of the contract, which on February 4th will go in front of the Oakland County Commissioners Board. And then they will apply, based on our application, the amount of money to that contract that we would be given to be able to use to purchase product, to be able to help these restaurants out. So one of the things that we looked at was, what are the products and how are they going to be effective for our particular community? And what it boils down to is that these little single domes and single greenhouses only allow for 1 family group at a time, and then there's a 20-minute lag while you hose it down to sterilize it. And so we thought that maybe what would make more sense is to purchase commercial grade 20 by 20 tents with sides. And these are the ones you'll see at major events, not the little 10-foot square ones or 8-foot square ones that blow over in the wind, but these are commercial grade. Use those for this program. So in this case, there would be 3 restaurants, and each of them would like to have 2 tents. That would equal about $5,000 per restaurant. So the rules are that you're not supposed to allocate any more than $5,000 per restaurant. So we wouldn't be able, with the number of people we have, to use the entire 36,000. But we would still, there's plenty of money there. If all 7 had agreed to do it, then we would have used all that, be able to use that money up. So the net result is, when we were looking at these items, the county doesn't care what happens to them after they're distributed. And it seemed kind of, goofy to expect that these vinyl bubbles and plastic greenhouses are going to be able to be reused or recycled. And the township certainly wouldn't want to have them back. So what we'd be doing is passing off $36,000 if all 7 had been involved. And then the business owners would have to pay tax on that, $5,000 in value. So the township, from all I've been able to hear so far, is able to maintain ownership of these tents or the product that you give them. And if the tents, and if and when the program expires, and I think that's something that will be based on when the restaurants can open up to full bore, then the township has the right to be able to take the tents back. And the thought process behind that is, the restaurants won't have to pay tax on it. The township now has some, what you could call event tents that the library could use, the art council could use, the township could use for the events that we seem to have, and nobody ever seems to have any tents available. So what it really does is it gives it makes an ultra use out of that amount of money, and it just doesn't go to waste and get pitched out after the end of the operation. So the first item is, we need to get an approval for me. I think that's it, isn't it, Gary? An approval for me to sign. Let's see if that's it.
Right, so you have, the packet has a document called Restaurant Relief Program Interlocal Agreement.
Yep.
If the board was inclined to approve this concept, a motion such as follows would do it. It would be a motion to approve the Restaurant Relief Program interlocal agreement with Oakland County and authorize the supervisor to sign that agreement once it has been completed in accordance with the outline at tonight's meeting and the award that is given by the county.
Frederick, so moved.
Support, Salvia.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Anybody have any questions on this before we move any further?
I do. Couple things. So the restaurants have these tents and they're gonna heat them?
Yeah, potentially.
So they're gonna have to put out the money for the heaters.
Yep. There's some stuff they're gonna have to do. Supply
So-
their own tables. There's different options, like if they'd take one tent, we could get tables and chairs for them too. But the three of them have decided they want two tents, and they seem to be the ones that are more bar oriented. So that's kind of the use of
Oh,
skybox.
so there's a different form of heating.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I don't want to go any further with any comments. I'm trying to be positive that we're helping these businesses. I will say that there's some of the businesses felt that it wasn't worth the additional cost, and that there were some issues with some of the staff really not liking the idea that they got to go in and out doors and do that type of thing. But that was the individual restaurants made those choices, and so three of them have decided they think it's worth it. And to give you an idea, I tried to get to the Wheel Inn, but the timing wasn't right, and they'd already applied for a permit, and they bought this monster tent that's bigger than their restaurant, and they're setting up their own deal. So they said they didn't need to participate, so they had an opportunity. And I even offered table chairs, and he'd already bought out a bunch of tables and chairs from a restaurant. So he's on his own path to be successful. So it seems like it's the more bar related that are more interested in it.
So they would have to use product that's purchased through Oakland County.
Through Highland Township.
Right, but Oakland County is supplying it to the township.
No.
Rick, can I say something, or am I out of order?
No, go ahead.
Okay, the way I understood this, Rick, like for instance, if there is reimbursement.
Right. So if the Wheel has bought that.
There's that, and there's also like if somebody has bought or purchased into a new website format, they can get reimbursed for that. So this is stuff that I just want to bring to your attention, Rick. You have 3 restaurants that have interest. I'm not sure if you're counting the one that I spoke with this afternoon. I called 2. One I haven't heard from. One would be interested in the tent.
Okay, so that would be
right. But there's other things they can do, such as they can we can get them the sprayers and refills for the sprayers.
Right.
PPE. So I just want the board to understand it's not just the tents. If these restaurants don't want the tents, they may want to take advantage of updating their electronic, digital software kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, it has been very difficult to get to have it very clear. Especially when they throw this at you one day and then
that's right. We had to jump through hoops, Rick. You're right.
And so anyways, what it boils down to is we're going to apply for the entire 36,000, and then anything that we can do to help any of those restaurants that are doing outdoor stuff, we can help them get some type of a recoup. So, and I'm glad you brought that up, Missy, because I was thinking about that and going, well, let's see, we could do, I guess we could do that. So,
Yeah, I mean, not that we have to retain, secure it, but I think we can reimburse them.
yeah, there'd have to be receipting. There's actually a bunch
Yeah.
of homework to do.
Process.
To track all this too. So,
Yeah.
so anyway,
Rick,
yeah.
would the township purchase the items up to $5,000 each for the restaurants, and then we submit it to Oakland County for reimbursement?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, what happens is the money actually, if I remember right, Missy, they're going to send a major portion of it right up front.
Yeah, like half of it. Yeah.
And then they'll, you'll have to pull your paperwork together and for reimbursement for any more amounts.
Right.
Up
Okay.
to the total of $36,730 or whatever it is. So, yeah, it's going to take some homework.
So first disbursement, 70%.
Oh,
Yeah.
And then you must have to refund anything you don't use.
Correct.
So are you designating somebody to oversee this, Rick?
Yeah, she's the one that's only, she's so short she can't see her there. So Missy Rich is the one that.
Is that Missy?
Yeah. I'm so lucky.
Can I say something?
And the DDA, let's put it that way. So
Yeah, the DDA.
go ahead, Brian.
I just want to say, I know it sounds like it's kind of I want to say a hassle in a sense of, obviously it's bureaucracy and timing and everything, but at least we're doing something. I mean, even open at 25%, these businesses, that's gonna be tough because that's not enough. So I'm glad that the ones that are taking advantage of it to get more people to come in. I agree on the bubble thing. They're kind of cool to look at, but if it's such a pain, probably a great move not doing that. It's funny, before you said tents, I was thinking tents. In my head, I thought it'd be a great way to go. Because I thought, you can get more people under there and so on. But I think it's just great that at least we have an option. I'm not involved with all the paperwork, and so it's easy for me to say, but Missy, thank you, and Rick. I know anything else ever happens with the bureaucratic stuff. I know how it just kind of, just gets thrown on you, but at least we're doing our part to help. I think that's great. So, and hopefully the other businesses will take advantage of the other stuff they can do, like Missy mentioned, beyond tents. And, if anything, any way we can help, because my fear is eventually we're going to drive down the road and there'll be nothing. There's dark restaurants everywhere. And if you don't have a drive-through option, makes it awful tough. So I just want to tell you guys, thanks for doing what you're doing. It's great.
Okay, I guess I missed something here too. We're supposed to apply, have, this is the documents on the screen is a approval for grant application. So it's kind of, everything has jumped at us so fast. We put that in the package and I forgot that needs to be the first thing that we approve. Now, we have.
You have a motion on the floor?
Yep. So I guess we could go ahead. Gary, you see any problem with this?
Amend your current motion to say with this motion, including authorization for the grant.
Okay, so moved.
So moved, Frederick.
Yep, okay, good.
Is there also a resolution?
Yes, there's also a resolution.
So should we include that in this motion as well?
The
I didn't
resolution,
know if you wanted 3 different motions or.
the resolution regarding
That should be
temporary restaurant uses should be separate.
Okay. Okay, so this one is for the agreement and the application.
I support.
Yeah, I think Joe already did.
Okay, good for him.
All right, are we ready to vote?
Yes, please.
All right, Mrs. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Trustee Howe, yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Cooper, yes.
Mrs. Frederick,
Frederick, yes.
Clerk Flowers votes yes. Mr. Salvia,
Salvia, yes.
Mr. Hamel,
Yeah, Hamel, yes.
motion carries.
Okay, the next item is, because of all of this, as a part of that agreement with the county, we also have to follow our ordinances, of which a goodly part of this doesn't meet the ordinance. So we have to temporarily kind of find a way to move around it. So our planning department, and Gary, I guess you were involved in this as well, to come up with a resolution that allows us to offer temporary restaurant uses and structures during the COVID epidemic. So,
Can I address the board?
yes, you may.
Yeah, so actually what I found when Beth Corwin presented this to me was our zoning ordinance allows temporary uses to be approved by the planning commission or in certain situations by the zoning administrator administratively. What this resolution does is expresses the board's support for the zoning administrator to approve temporary uses for up to 6 months for these restaurant situations we just talked about on the agreement, with approvals beyond that 6 months to be by the planning commission. So it just basically says that the township board supports the administrative approach for the first 6 months so the program can get off the ground immediately without the need to await placement on planning commission agendas and action at that level. And so it's not really skirting the ordinance. It's just saying we support the administrative approach in this situation for the first 6 months.
All right. I'll make the motion to approve resolution 21-04 regarding temporary restaurant uses and structures during the COVID-19 epidemic.
Cooper, yeah, support.
Okay. Any questions? Vote, please.
Mr. Howe,
Trustee Howe, yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Cooper, yes.
Mrs. Frederick,
Frederick, yes.
Clerk Flowers votes yes. Mr. Salvia,
Salvia, yes.
Mrs. Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Mr. Hamel.
Hamel, yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, this next item is resolution number, well, we need a number in there, 21-05 for poverty exemption, policy guidelines and determinations. So I don't know if there's anything special in this one, Gary. I think we just had to have the maximum incomes detailed for what was poverty, considered poverty in our community. So does anybody have any questions on that?
Go ahead.
I'll wait.
I just had one. In the past, if you had a poverty exemption, you didn't have to apply every year. It was good for 3 years if there was no changes. Do you know that, Jen?
No, you did have to apply every year, and sometimes you had to come in front of the board every year.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So
with
that's the change,
COVID,
right?
yes, that is the major change.
Okay.
And that's, if I may, Mr. Hamel,
Yes, you may.
Public Act 253, which was adopted back in December, and it is in effect now, allows the township board to approve things that previously weren't on the table, and those are in here, which is you don't have to reapply. And I mean, they're each separately addressed. My understanding was the township wanted to extend all of those considerations to its residents that may definitely be in need of the poverty exemption, and so that's what this does. So it's like the old ones. You set your income and asset levels, but it's new in terms of people not having to apply and being able to get relief for up to 3 years.
Gary?
Yes.
Well, they will still have to meet the income level though, the next year.
Yes, there is the state tax commission just, it was either last week or the week before, issued forms to be used not only in the traditional application for the poverty exemption, which should go on your website, but they actually issued a form. I didn't make up the name of this. It is called the Affidavit of Ownership and Occupancy to Remain Exempt by Reason of Poverty. And so this resolution, if you adopt it, would call for people to still do that. They basically file an affidavit, say, I still own it, I still live there, and my financial situation has not changed since the last time I got one of these. So there is still something required, but it's not the full-blown application that is subject to review at the Board of Review.
All right.
Thank you.
So just more work for your assessor.
I think she's ready. They're ready. So, all right. I guess we didn't make a motion on that. Yeah, I did, didn't I? No,
No,
what am I saying here?
Does it have a resolution number?
I think it might be, yeah, I think
2106.
it did. I
yeah,
said
it's
21-05. That's it. I did make a motion to approve that.
Okay, do we have a second?
Support Cooper.
Okay.
All right, vote please.
Mrs. Cooper,
Cooper, yes.
Mrs. Frederick,
Frederick, yes.
Clerk Flowers votes yes. Mr. Salvia,
Salvia, yes.
Mrs. Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Mr. Howe,
How? Yes.
Mr. Hamel,
Hamel, yes.
motion carries.
Okay, the next one's a simple one. We've, Ann Jenkins had worked for us in the past. We've had some issues with having enough crossing guards. There was a while where at Milford Road, we didn't need one anymore. And so now we're back to where we need a crossing guard at Milford Road and Livingston. And so Ann Jenkins has agreed to come back if we'd hire her back, and she will fill in on an as-needed basis. The recommended pay rate will be $16.31 per hour. I think they only work 1 hour a day, don't they?
Yep.
The start date will be February 2nd, 2021. So I'd like to make a motion to rehire Ann Jenkins at $16.31 an hour.
Support How?
Question,
Yes?
dumb question. Is she an employee?
Yep.
Okay, I mean, if she gets hit by a car, does she have insurance or things like that?
We do.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty low pay to get hit by a car, but I'll tell you what,
Well,
without those girls out there, there's times when they've had to jump out of the way, and they need them there, and we probably should put them in armor. I don't know, but we appreciate what they do, because like right now they're out there in the cold weather and they go out for a half hour in the morning and a half hour in the afternoon to get just a couple of kids home. So, all right, so
We need to vote.
we need to vote on it.
Yeah. Ready?
Yep.
Mrs. Frederick,
Frederick, yes.
Clerk Flowers votes yes. Mr. Salvia,
Salvia, yes.
Mrs. Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Mr. Howe,
How? Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Cooper, yes.
Mr. Hamel,
Hamel, yes.
motion carries.
All right, so what happened here? How to find it? Where'd it go? License agreement. There we go.
You got it.
All right, so this next item is the Hickory Pines Park license agreement for operating the soccer fields. And Gary, did you get my email from Ben?
We did. And if I can address the board very briefly. This afternoon, Rick sent on to me some comments by the managing member of 201 Lone Tree LLC, asking for 2 changes to this agreement. Rick, can you scroll down? No, you're good, right there.
Right there in B, yeah.
So if you look at section 1B, this was structured where it's set up as 4 5-year terms. And as drafted, it would allow the township with 1 year notice before the end of any of those terms to say that we're not going to renew. The change requested by 201 Lone Tree was that it would have a similar right. I have no issue with that. and would propose to address it in the fourth line. Change the words "the township" to "either party." And then
Right
the
here. the
township becomes "either party," and HVAC becomes "the other party." And that would accommodate that request.
Okay,
The second change requested, which I would not recommend, is on page 3 in section 7, which you will see, it says the HVAC, that's the acronym for this entity we'd have a license with. Their usage and permits fees that would be paid by people to use the soccer fields must be approved by the township board. The request was to not have that be the township board, but rather have it be someone who could give approvals quicker without the delay inherent in getting on a board agenda and so forth. This agreement is basically an extension of the license agreement we did for 1 year. Except Beth, all of you are on the board. About this time last year, we did a 1-year license agreement with this group. And this is the same concept. Substantively, it's identical. It just, took some dates out. But I think that should be a situation where on an annual basis, periodically, or maybe it's some other basis, the township board approves what the fees are going to be out there. That can be done in a flexible manner, and it can be done with a resolution, and it can be done with a resolution that would afford the right to make exceptions to fees, to some administrator such as a supervisor. But I think it's important that the township board ultimately be the one that approves whatever the usage fees are going to be out there. So I did not agree with that requested change. And so I didn't make it. But I'm not the boss, you guys are.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So is this 7 paragraph 2?
7 is one paragraph. No,
Second line.
Oh, second
The
line.
request to, it reads, which must be approved by the township board. The request was that be changed such as which must be approved by the township supervisor, or somebody, that just had the ability without having to await getting on a township board agenda and getting approval.
So we don't have to approve every single one. We approve it January 31st or.
You would approve a schedule of fees for the coming year.
Okay.
And I mean, last year, for instance, I think I drafted the schedule where it, was the fees shall not exceed a certain amount. It gave the ability to the licensee to charge less. If they were trying to maximize field use, they might charge less than what the approved maximum fees would be. So again, the fee schedule is what would be the key. And I think flexibility that is desired by the licensee can be built into that without the township board on a long-term, potentially 20-year deal, giving up its right to review and approve the usage fees. I think that should stay with the township board.
So it would be just something we put on annually on our township board. They would submit it and then we would annually review and approve it.
Annually is one way to go. I mean, this is a business. They run on a budget. I would like to think and believe it to be true that they would project what their fees need to be for an upcoming year. And they present it to you and ask you to approve it. Just like.
Question, if there was some kind of crisis, if there was some kind of crisis, it could still wait for board approval. It's not like,
Or the flexibility to deal with a crisis or emergency could be built right into the fee schedule.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think
I don't think we should take it out of the agreement. I think we should respond to that request by trying to build flexibility into the approval resolution or the fee schedule itself.
Good with that.
All right, well, one of the issues will be that the group has agreed to sign it if two conditions were met. And so now we're meeting one condition and now we're going to have to renegotiate. So this.
No, we don't. You don't have to renegotiate. You just tell them you've approved it with the one change.
Okay.
If they won't sign it, they won't sign it. If they won't sign it, I mean, I only got this afternoon.
Right.
I mean, but if they won't sign it without that change, then you'll have to decide. You know, do you want to go along with that and then delegate it for up to 20 years to somebody, you know, that's not the township board or not? I'm not telling you that's illegal to do that. I just think it's a bad idea.
I don't have that. I don't have that email in front of me. So
here was the exact description of that request. This is in a letter from Mr. DePonio dated January 29. This section requires the township board to approve the usage fees being charged by HVAC. Submission to the township board can be a long and cumbersome process that negates almost all requests that are time sensitive. Most requests for field usage other than scheduled programs run by HVAC fall into this category. We propose the township board appoint the park director or another township employee to review these requests and expedite the process. That is ignoring my concept that you have a schedule of usage fees that's approved, that is available. I don't think this should be a situation where your licensee is out there and the public is out there never knowing what the price might be, never knowing what the maximum price might be. I think that should be known and published in advance and then build in exceptions to it.
yeah, you know, I guess I'm trying to picture what they're really, are they assuming that we have to approve every single use?
That's what I'm hearing.
That's what it reads as, and that's not required.
And I think that on that premise, I very well could talk to Mr. DePonio and get that probably worked out, because I think that they're thinking that this is going to be every single time somebody wants to use that field, they're going to have to get approval. But what Gary is saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is that no, you give us, we'll have a fee schedule, covers anybody. You decide how much you want to charge them. You can charge up to or less than. Is that, and so we don't care who's quote, well, that's not that we don't care, but we're not going to try and make it so that you have to have an approval for every single change or person.
Oh, heaven forbid. No, that's not the intention at all.
Right, right.
That's what I'm getting at. The township board has approved a schedule of usage and permit fees so that that's what it costs unless there's some exception made.
Okay, I think I can get that working.
Right. Maybe it's a misunderstanding, but we certainly don't need to bring individual field requests to the township board. That's
okay. Let me. I'll work with Mr. DePonio on that, and if he doesn't want to sign it, he doesn't have to. But in this also on number 7, I don't know if it's a typo, but it says usage / permit fees to be paid. Is that a double?
I would never do such a thing.
Okay, well, I just wanted to bring it to that person's attention to see.
That person will fix that.
Cool.
My apologies.
Well, I'm glad I could catch that for you. Especially being, I mean, this thing's last minute. Everything, you know, with Mr. Pony was last minute on this one, but they did get it to us, and he did. So I will
make those edits and send it over to you in the morning.
Okay, and then what I guess I'll do is I'll make a motion to approve this agreement, this license agreement for use, scheduling, operation, and maintenance of the Hickory Ridge Pines Park soccer fields with the recommended modifications as per our attorney. And I guess that's all we need to do. And then if Mr. DePonio doesn't want to sign it, then it's moot. So we'll have to go back and punt. But I think we can work that out. So
Frederick, second.
All right.
But I do have a question.
Yeah.
So when would we tell the HVAC to, that we need to approve their fees? At the next meeting?
Probably.
Because that would be March.
Before they start
Didn't
playing.
didn't they send a schedule or something before?
I think we had something last year.
I think we sent something, they had something for Gary to look at.
I just didn't, see it here.
So was that before?
They sent to us their proposed budget for the coming year. No, they sent their budget for last year, as they were required to do under the agreement. And they sent a schedule of use over the last year.
Okay.
And yes, they should turn in their proposed usage fees. And it would be great if those could be on the March agenda.
Okay, well, we'll make that happen.
And I'm not going to come up with the exact date, but due to COVID last year, I don't think we got around to approving their usage fees until sometime in the summer. If you look at the June and July timeframe, I think you'll probably find what was approved for 2020. And that's really all we're talking about.
Okay. We'll make that happen. All right, so we've had a motion and second on that motion. And vote, please.
All right, Clerk Flowers votes yes. Mr. Salvia,
Salvia, yes.
Mrs. Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Mr. Howe,
How? Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Cooper, yes.
Mrs. Frederick,
Frederick, yes.
Mr. Hamel,
Hamel, yes.
motion carries.
Last comment on that question 7.
Yeah.
I kind of looked at it and it was something like saying the usage permit fees to be paid by an organized group. So it's like possibly it could work, Counselor, depending on how you read it.
I think it's a typo. But I appreciate the excuse.
I tried every way possible.
I looked at it like it could possibly work as you expressed it.
Joe, you're always very generous.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next item. Is the chief still awake? Oh, there he is.
Still here, Brad, bushy tailed.
All right, I'm gonna let you take your fire stuff and go forward, and we'll take it from there.
All right, first off, I'd like to thank everybody for November approving the purchase of a new ambulance for the department. As a supervisor will attest, because he has our Active 911 app, the ambulance is running pretty busy. In November, you approved the purchase of an ambulance for $120,000, which was approximately $60,000 less than what a new ambulance would cost. Unfortunately, I'm going to mess that up with this meeting. Attached is a request to purchase a Stryker power load and power stretcher system. The idea behind this is everything's automatic and operates off of batteries or operates off the truck's battery to take the load off the firefighters that are doing the work. Generally, we respond with 2 people if it's a patient that needs additional assistance, or if it's a higher priority or higher acuity EMS run, we will send the engine on it. But probably 70% of the time we handle it with 2 people on the run. This would, in my opinion, reduce the risk of duty-related injuries drastically. There is a link on the memo that I sent. I'm not sure if it'll show. It's only a real short link. It just shows how the system works. Basically, it can be operated with 1 finger. Push the stretcher in, pull the stretcher out. Stretcher lowers at the push of a button. And it's an amazing system. It is $53,500, but that does come with an 11-year warranty, and that's installation and everything on the device. Oh, here it goes right here.
Welcome. This program will guide you through the setup and operation of your new Stryker Power Pro XT cot. The Power Pro XT is a highly advanced battery-powered hydraulic cot.
It's the
serve your
What's
patients
that?
better.
10-minute video, that's not the one.
Well, I think what we can do is maybe I can speed through this thing. Or if anybody wants.
The rail clamp on the cot fastener can be adjusted as needed. Next, slide the in fastener.
Here, I'll help you out. You can probably see some of the images that are here. And I think when the chief came to me to talk to me about this, one of the things that the first thing I asked is how many of the firefighters have been hurt trying to lift people into ambulances, and we've had several. And when you take the amount of money that we've had to pay out for long-term injury stuff, this is the kind of thing that helps prevent that. Trying to find the one of 500 videos here is going to be difficult without wasting a lot more time. But the one that the chief and I looked at showed a little young girl that was probably maybe 10 or 11 years old, by herself, loaded the stretcher with a person on it. And,
250-pound person.
yeah, and literally could push it in by herself and could release it and pull it out by herself. And she managed to do the whole thing without any assistance. So it gives you an idea of how it takes that load off of the employees, the firefighters. And this is where a lot of people get hurt throughout the industry. So,
and just
go
a
ahead.
little bit on the expenses. One injury from a transport that had an employee out for extended time period. Just the medical expenses were $98,000.
Plus you're short that employee.
Yep.
Plus you're short that employee. That was just medical expenses. That wasn't time lost from work or anything.
All right, so I guess I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the let's see, purchase of the Striker Power. Where'd that thing go? Striker, what's the official name of it? Striker Power Pro or something like that? MTS Power Pro Cot. Okay, MTS Power Load and MTS Power Pro Cot. With the funds to be paid from 402-290-000-942-00. Was that bad, Tammy?
You know, we have a budget amendment for this in 2 items, so I don't think we need to go into reading account numbers in this motion.
All right, so skip all that. Not to exceed $53,500. Oh, there's that's
Super support.
okay. Supported. Vote, please.
Okay, any discussion? All right, Mr. Salvia,
Salvia, yes.
Mrs. Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Mr. Howe,
How overwhelming? Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Cooper, yes.
Mrs. Frederick,
Frederick, yes.
Clerk Flowers votes yes. Mr. Hamel,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. My staff thanks you as well.
All right, next item, Chief.
This is actually falls under the $5,000 limit, but it was so close I wanted to provide the 3 different quotes. We purchased a thermal imager back in 2018. It was damaged last year. It was damaged beyond repair. I need to replace that device. All I need is just the camera. The whole system is somewhere between $8,500 and $9,500. The prices you see here are just for the cameras. This is a device we use on structure fires and also to assess scenes from the outside of the structure. We're recommending going with Douglas Safety, which is the cheapest price out of all of them.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the Douglas Safety Systems Avon TICS3 thermal imaging camera for $4,749.17.
How support?
Okay, moved and supported. Vote, please.
Mrs. Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Mr. Howe,
How, yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Cooper, yes.
Mrs. Frederick,
Frederick, yes.
Clerk Flowers votes yes. Mr. Salvia,
Salvia, yes.
Mr. Hamel,
Hamel, yes.
motion carries.
Okay, the next item is budget amendments.
No,
What I do? Oh, no, skipped it. I tried to do that, Chief. Sorry.
yeah,
You gotta go, now you gotta
Please
speak.
don't do that. I need this bad. Again, this is the last time I'll bother you for tonight. We're currently in the process. I'm sure everybody's seen the fire station up on Highland Road. If anybody'd like to take a tour of it, please contact me anytime. I'm more than happy to show it off. We spent the last few months trying to get around having to hire a IT consultant for the project, but it's way above any of our comprehension. We need to design a system that's going to be set up into the training room so that we can present whatever material we're presenting, get the PA system to cover that large room, as well as get a system set up for the whole fire station so we can broadcast emergency conversations on the radio system throughout the building, or any PA public announce or public addressing systems throughout the station. We've made several attempts contacting different vendors in the area. We just can't find an easy path. Bruchelle IT is a local company, very reputable, very knowledgeable. I met with him several times. He is, I think he's a blessing to have, not only as a resident, but also as somebody that can help us out with this project. This is a request to hire
Michelle,
Yes, thank you. Independent Telecom as a subcontractor to design the systems that are needed for the fire station, and also to help us vet the candidates that are applying to get us the most bang for our buck.
All right,
make a motion to support.
I mean, approve the
right.
$4,500 contract.
Motion to approve the contract.
Okay, well, I'll second that. Vote, please.
Okay,
Have a question?
yeah,
The equipment, will that be transferable then to the new fire stations?
That's what this is for. It's for the new station.
Okay, thank you.
all right, barring any other discussion, Mr. Howe,
How, yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Cooper, yes.
Mrs. Frederick,
Frederick, yes.
Clerk Flowers votes yes. Mr. Salvia,
Yes, Salvia.
Mrs. Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Mr. Hamel,
Hamel, yes.
motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item's budget amendment for the fire department. And it's to roll over unused funds from the prior budget year for fire capital construction in process for station 1 and 2. So I'll make a motion to approve the budget amendment.
Cooper, support.
Okay. Vote.
Unless there's any discussion, we can vote. Mr. Cooper,
Cooper, yes.
Mrs. Frederick,
Frederick, yes.
Clerk Flowers votes yes. Mr. Salvia,
Salvia, yes.
Mrs. Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Mr. Howe,
How, yes.
Mr. Hamel,
Hamel, yes.
motion carries.
Okay, I'm going to speed this along a little bit here. This next budget amendment is to appropriate funds towards fire capital vehicles. I'd like to make a motion to approve the budget amendment for that purpose.
For support.
And I just want to clarify, this is to cover the cost of that, what do you call it? Thing that we just approved,
The stretcher.
the stretcher thingy.
Easy load and power stretcher.
Yes.
Stretcher thingy.
Yes.
No, power stretcher.
Right.
Power stretcher thingy.
Can also be used in dungeons. So, all right, so vote on that? Or did
All
we?
right. Mrs. Frederick,
Who's in trouble?
Frederick, yes.
Mrs. Clerk Flowers votes yes. Mr. Salvia,
Salvia, yes.
Mrs. Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Mr. Howe,
Oh, yes, on the thingy.
Mrs. Cooper,
Cooper, yes, on the power striker stretcher.
Mr. Hamel.
Mr. Hamel says yes.
All right.
Okay, the next budget amendment is to handle the thing we did, the approval we did in January 4th meeting to move funds from building inspectors into building part-time seasonal wage, and which you'll see the net effect is 0. I'd like to make a motion to approve that budget amendment.
Lewis, support.
Vote, please.
All right.
Questions?
Unless there's discussion, Clerk Flowers votes yes. Mr. Salvia,
Salvia, yes.
Mrs. Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Mr. Howe,
Oh, yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Cooper, yes.
Mrs. Frederick,
Frederick, yes.
Mr. Hamel.
Hamel, yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, next item is community sharing, and as per our attorney's letter on December 2nd, we had some other requirements that we needed to take into account for community sharing, and those are a concept site plan to locate the facility on the property, and then there's building conceptual drawings, hopefully for the board to approve, and then some discussion on some alternative uses in the event that the community sharing ceases operation. So the first thing that we'll bring up here is this is an overview laid on top of the current Google map, and this shows you the location. M59 is to the lower end of the picture. The down in here is the post office parking lot for the library. It's going to require a new drive that comes through a parking lot. And this is the building to scale, septic field, proximity to the cell tower. And so this is the site plan that we'd like to, hopefully, I guess we can do we need to do one motion, you think, on this, Gary, to approve the package, or?
Well, the agenda item, go back to my letter. Number 1 was, to get some more details on what was going to be done there. And the main thing for the township board at this point is, looking at these plans, are you satisfied that if community sharing was no longer functioning and this building reverted to the township, if it could be suitable for one or more public uses? That's really the main task. The next step in this, and it just didn't happen for tonight's meeting, is to actually have an agreement presented to you under which the township would lease the land occupied by the building to community sharing. If you were to approve these concept drawings tonight, they'd make wonderful exhibits to that kind of a legal agreement, which you will see on your agenda for March. So yes, if you were to adopt a motion, it would be to approve the concept plans presented, being satisfied that the building and improvements could be used by the township in the future and for public purposes.
All right, I'm going to make that my motion. And then what I'll do is this would be looking at the building's west face. So it would be looking at this face of the building here. So the building sits north and south. The door here is the entranceway where people would come and go. This is more or less an exit door after they've been inside the building and done their shopping, so on and so forth. This end of the building, if you look at this part, is 32 by 60, and that's going to be in a non-heated format for the storage of items that community sharing would use for their garage sale. So they collect items that they have an annual garage sale for. The intent is to try and help community sharing to be healthy from the start. This road and driveway will be done in an aggregate product that will eventually at some future date can be paved, but to start out, it'll be done in an aggregate so that they can save hundreds of thousands of dollars in the initial build out to be able to make this happen. And then there'll be some paving in the front where the handicap suggested handicap is. So this area would be paved here. And then this would be set up so that you drive in with a truck and back up to this door and be able to unload product into that space.
Question?
Yes, sir.
Is that curbing? Is that the illustration of the border of the parking lot? Is that curbing to be installed?
No, it's not. It's for illustration purposes. Future curbing, yes. And what it is it will eventually follow the curbing that is existing now. So this is existing. If I go back to the other one, you'll see the, come on, move. I don't know what's going on. Locked up. There we go. Okay, so if you look at this one, you can see the actual. So it's laid over the top of it. This is, if you remember an initial one, I had another cul-de-sac in here because that was originally designed in. Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happened that has caused some issues. And that is that in this area here is a bunch of underground water contamination mitigation system. This blue line that you see here is actually a water line that is part of our community water system. Right here is a major manhole for a pipe connection. There's another major one here and one here. So, and then in here and over here are test wells for the pollution mitigation testing. So we can't bring the drive in through there because these can't be covered. So the only place to go through is to go out off at an angle like this to get it back there. And I think that, this is a significantly wide avenue. You can see it's actually wider than the rest of the roads, but it'll be done in a fashion where this is a level shot off. What does happen is this is a hole right here. This goes probably 5 feet below the level of the road here. So there's going to be significant fill. And, but in this area, this is quite flat. And I have already spent considerable time over there with machinery to get the land prepped. Community sharing rented an excavator and a gigantic dump vehicle. And I moved, I think I mentioned that the last time, I moved several thousand cubic yards of topsoil that is going to be good for a berm on the backside. I've had people come from the neighborhood behind. Only had one comment where somebody said they didn't want to see the building. It turned out that individual doesn't even have a view of the building from or the site. She's on the other side of the road and it's blocked off, but she just didn't want to see the building. The building is not excessively tall. It's got 10-foot eaves, right, Dave? You can just shake your head. Yeah, 10-foot eaves. The color scheme is pretty much the color scheme we thought was compatible with the library. It has the board and batten look of the library. It's all metal. The wainscot, I think, is a good idea. It creates a nice change. It's done the same way that
Fire station.
the feed store is. So it gives a look of the fire station too, in terms of the board and batten look. And one of the reasons that you want to put that type of feature on there is it allows for over time, if somebody smacks into it, it only ruins a 4-foot piece of metal instead of a whole continuous piece. So it's a very highly repairable and stable product. The inside of this building will be just generally open. I don't think we're doing any insulation in that, Dave. Shake your head, yes or no?
I think we are gonna do insulation on the outside walls, yes.
Okay, so that'll be insulated. The other side will be very heavily insulated to make it very efficient to operate, and it'll have a cathedral ceiling to it. So it's not going to be a flat ceiling. It's going to actually have a somewhat of a cathedral shape. So in relevance to what could the building be used for in a future application, the main part of the building, the long part with the cathedral ceiling, could be wide open. So the concept for community sharing is to build partition walls that are not necessarily all the way to the ceiling, but can divide the building up and actually create a modular movable setup. There'll be 2 bathrooms and a kitchen, and they'll be up at the most likely at the north end. Any of that can change. I mean, it doesn't make the building any different than the way it is. So the interior stuff can be moved around, but the idea is that that could be used as a community center at a future date. We hope that never happens. We hope that community sharing has a quote permanent home. And as another alternative, it could be a Parks and Rec building should the parks someday go on into a commission format or whatever. Then you've got a place where Parks and Recreation could store their equipment, with maintenance equipment for the township as it grows. So it has plenty of potential future applications. So I think on that basis, there's a view of looking to the north. And then that's on the north side of the building, looking to the south. So this is a floor plan. And then we've got paper elevation. So that's the extent of the presentation on that. Anybody have any questions? Boy, silence is gold.
Rick, I have one. Back on the site plan, and this is just a goofy question because I don't understand what I'm looking at. The tan hash marks that are to the east of the building and kind of go into the parking lot a little bit. What is that?
Those are elevations.
No, on the other side, keep over.
Oh, here?
The tan hash marks. Yeah, that. What is that?
That's the tree line.
Oh, that's the tree line.
Yeah,
okay.
so
Thank you.
If I can get this thing to move.
Yeah, I knew what the elevations were. I'm like, what's that other line? Okay.
Question.
Okay, so,
Question. Committee sharing. Have they already begun contracting with the building company?
Yeah, they've already. The community sharing went through their process to look for a builder, and they've made a choice to go with this Wicks building. Dave, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I would. Thanks, Joe. We actually have met quite a bit with them. We actually made a down payment. We had to do that because they announced at the end of January, 11% increase by the 25th. So to lock in the prices, we made a down payment on the building with WIC. So we're meeting with some WIC's architects this week to talk about HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. So we moved a little fast, But we had to do that to lock in a price, which was a substantial savings.
They've seen the site plan?
Yes, yes. And we've shared it. Right now, we're trying to work with DTE and consumers. Consumers already said there's a gas line at the end of Town Center Road, and they're also looking at Joshua Circle or Joshua Drive. And so we've shared the site plan with them as well as the builder.
So the current gas line, if you can see the mouse, ends right over here.
Yep.
So it'd have to be brought over and then brought up. The blue line here is the existing water line, and there's also a fire hydrant right here. So the water connection will probably be made from back here, and all of the water, and so this line for the septic will probably be put over here. When I drew it here, the plan that Dave had looked at putting bathrooms over here, but now we're looking at keeping them all at one end of the building. So you keep all your water and services in one spot instead of spreading them out all over. So I think that's the pretty much all I've got to say. We've got lots of work to do to make it happen, and the key is finding people to help with the project to keep it moving forward and see how many freebies we can get out of people in our community to be able to make this work. So,
Question?
Yes, sir.
Doesn't any of this go before the planning commission or?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, February 14th or whatever, not the fourth meeting, but the latter one, this whole package will be presented to the planning commission. And then there'll be things that'll come into it. I asked them to just make some recommendations, and then we can put those into the plan. So everybody understands this is a plan that I drew up, not this one here. So, there's things that I didn't put in it because I figured that if you gave it to the planning commission, they could say, let's talk about where you're going to put your dumpster, so there's things you have to have happen there. But the key is that it's seriously trying to keep this fast tracked. And so that's the reason we've been everybody's been jumping forward. So we want to make sure that we've got what the building is ordered for. Materials are what, Dave?
The materials were requested for June 1st. And again, he needs a date so the detailed architectural plans are very complicated. They need about 6 weeks. And then the June date, the start date will have to be negotiated based on how many his men are up north for April and May. And he's got to figure out when he can get them back in town. And I was going to add for the planning commission, we do have a sketch of what the concept is of the interior walls. Like the example is on the south side, the food pantry is 40 by 60. That's a very huge cathedral room. That's a real nice room, similar to we have now at Duck Lake Center. And then we'll have offices for client care, client clothing, client check-in. And we'll have a sketch of what those internal offices will look like.
All right.
Okay.
So
Rick, I think you started a motion and then we never got a second that I recall.
Salvia, support.
Okay.
Okay, moved and supported. Any more questions? All right, let's move forward with a vote.
Okay, Mr. Salvia,
Salvia, yes.
Mrs. Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Mr. Howe,
Howe, yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Cooper, yes.
Mrs. Frederick,
Frederick, yes.
Clerk Flowers votes yes. Mr. Hamel,
No, I'm just kidding.
motion
Yes.
carries.
Hamel says yes.
All right.
I wanted Dave to kind of fall out of his chair there, but he held on.
Can I
So,
ask a question?
yes, you may.
So the next step is the February 18th Planning Commission
Yes.
and then the March 1st board meeting.
Yeah, for the lease agreement. And Gary, I need you to remind me if you don't get it. Lisa found out something in the Land Division Act, 288 of 1967. You might want to jot this down. 560.102 definitions. Section 102, and it's the definition of division. So you might want to look at that to see if that changes how you approach the land lease. And it's calling for a land division requirement. But ironically, we never did that for any of the cell towers. So I don't know if there's any issues with that or not, but so I don't know. You had mentioned something about we did a license. If anybody knows, it was a license with the soccer club. So I don't know if would be a similar thing where you do a license or a lease, because it says that if it's a purpose of sale or lease of more than 1 year.
I'll look at that.
Yeah. And I don't know if the township is subject to those rules specifically for township owned property or not. So you'll be able to look that up and you'll know. So that'll be for March 1st. All right. So next item. Is everybody still awake? Okay, so I know I got a lot of feedback on this already, and emails and phone calls and so on and so forth. And so Randy, I'll give you this in just a second, but I want to explain something, and then I'll let you go with your public comment. So what's happened is on a weekly basis, and this is no kidding, we've had not only the planning department and zoning department, but myself. I think Tammy, you said you've had people come in. Jennifer's been aware of this for quite a while. Query by interested parties about the possibility of opting into the allowance of medical marijuana facility and licensing. Currently, we're an opt-out community by default because we made no decision. Is that correct, Gary?
Yes.
Opted out.
What's that? Who said that? Okay, somebody said something.
I thought we opted out.
No, we chose to not act was, so that
Okay.
was an automatic opt-out is what it boils down to.
Thank you.
Without a vote.
Inferred opt-out. So this is strictly a discussion to look into the process and discuss with the board how they may wish to proceed, meaning it could be the door is open, and the reason the door is open is because of all the people who have asked for a response from the township. And I think that we owe business owners the same right to have an answer as we do homeowners on what they'd like to see happen. So this is the reason I brought this forward. I couldn't let it set without having an answer. And the question is, are we willing to opt in? So also at the same time, having meeting once a month with the township supervisors, just about every township is looking at this issue. Some of them have opted in, some of them are already in action. What I included in this packet was a copy of Waterford's ordinance, which was drafted by Mr. Dover and probably with some assistance. And it was strictly for some type of a comparative analysis. But I think the key is, I'm going to let Randy, I'm going to let you go ahead and speak at this time, because I know you want to say something before we go any further. So go ahead.
Good.
Randy.
Thanks, Rick. I'm Randy Root. I live at 3791 Heritage Farms Drive, but I'm actually here as the executive director of the Huron Valley Community Coalition, and our mission is to prevent teen drug and alcohol use. I didn't realize this was for a medical facility, which changes things a little bit. And I really wanted to point out for those who didn't know that the use of marijuana, particularly by young developing brain teenagers, can have some pretty serious impact. In fact, I just attended a conference recently and they were talking about how it's even worse for their school performance than those who use alcohol. So I think it's been kind of a long night. So rather than going into all the details of that, I at least like the trustees to take a look at I think Tammy shared a document with you that comes from the DEA that talks about preventing underage use of marijuana. And it's a really, really nice piece. It's about 8 pages, pretty easy to digest. But I think if you wanted to get more information about that, you can go to the website called getsmartaboutdrugs.gov and click on publications. So the question might be, what's this got to do with teen drug use if you're talking about medical and or even for that matter, recreational marijuana? But what we get concerned about is when these businesses come to an area and they start driving trucks around with signage on them, they have billboard signs on their buildings, it sort of normalizes the use of marijuana. And much as like we're concerned about too much alcohol advertising and how that affects kids' decisions, we'd feel the same way about the marijuana signage. So I just wanted to make sure that I see the business side of this thing, but I also know that just because people ask a lot doesn't mean that the answer necessarily needs to change. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing for our community. But as an organization, it's not for us to ask you how we think you should vote. It's mostly just to give you the information. And I just want to make sure that people understand that whatever they think about marijuana use amongst adults, it is particularly, and for some people, probably surprisingly dangerous for young people to use. So there are long-term mental health issues, short-term mental health issues, and certainly we worry about school because of the memory issues and attention issues. So, and even after using it can last for days. So if you could just kind of make sure that we weigh in on that a little bit, that would satisfy the coalition's concerns. And I'll let the other community members have their say about that as individuals. So I just wanted to mention that. Oh, and also, I don't know if Anthony is still on. This is sort of unrelated in a way, but I'm on the Huron Valley Schools Council for Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity. And so there's a lot of good stuff going on regarding diversity issues in the schools, and Dr. Salah is leading that group of parents, students, and school folks. And so I'm honored to be a part of that too, because I think it's really important that we get out in front of those kinds of issues too. So thanks for your time, everybody, and good luck.
So thank you, Randy. Randy, what I'd like you to do, this is a fact-finding process that we're working on, and this is just the start of it. So what we need is, if you want to put together a package, that's why I said write an email or put together a package and deliver it to us. I will see that all of the board members get that package, and it'll be a tool to put in the toolbox for decision making. So it's important to listen to everybody and to see where we stand and so on and so forth. So thank you. Appreciate that.
That's great, Rick. I will do that. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right.
Rick, there's another public comment before we keep moving.
And where are we at? Who is
Ms.
it?
Mathiak?
We need public commenters to identify themselves.
Hi, my name is Jessica Mathiak. I'm a resident of Highland. I am also the Pine Bluffs Homeowners Association Board Secretary. And I just was calling in today to share on behalf of the approximately 80 homeowners in our subdivision, our dissent for introducing this into our community. We really appreciate you guys being thoughtful and looking through things, not just from a business perspective, but how it will impact the community, especially for the many of us who have children and we're raising our children in this community. We're concerned about our home values. We're concerned about the access, as Randy just mentioned, to young people. Even specifically with medicinal marijuana, I'm also a registered nurse, and we are seeing an influx in negative outcomes related to edibles, where children are getting into medicinal marijuana. So just some of those things are quite concerning, and we just wanted to share our concerns related to that and appreciate you guys evaluating things more extensively, as Randy mentioned as well, just because the ask is there. It may not make sense for our community despite having a revenue producing, business coming into the area. So just appreciate you guys doing your due diligence and sharing on behalf of Pine Bluffs Homeowners Association that we would not like to see this happen in Highland.
Jessica, question?
Yes.
Joe Salvia, would
Hi, Joe.
you please send the information that you have about what you're talking about, especially by being a nurse? Could you forward some information?
Yeah, absolutely. My husband is also, he's a detective that works in narcotics. And so this is quite personal to us as well, just seeing the negative effects of things, just from a professional standpoint. But absolutely, Joe, I'd be happy to send what I can.
If you send the information to clerk@highlandtwp.org, then I can forward it to the board members.
Thank you, Tammy. Will do.
And I'm going to say that to anybody that wants to make a public comment, please try and back it up with an email, because we can hear you on this particular recording, but what happens is going back and trying to search a recording for somebody's comments makes it a little more difficult. And I think having a quote, a paper copy of what you might be able to add some additional feelings or some links or something to some places like Randy has mentioned. So if you could do that, anybody that wants to comment could do that, then that will help everybody in the process. Yes, Mr. Salvi.
Mr. Chairman, that would also allow them to put more detail into their comments, because they're being short right now.
Okay, anybody else have a comment they'd like to make? All right, so
Hold on, I'm sorry, Rick, I was a little late on getting to the mute button. Can I make a comment yet?
yeah, who are we talking to?
Scott Green.
Oh, Scott. Okay. The problem is I can't, you can't see.
No, I was going to give your name, give my name. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I do conference calls all the time, so I understand the need to get names until you get familiar with voices. But I would just say that I just hope that the board does their due diligence. There's a lot of information out there. I've been doing a little due diligence myself, and there's a lot of data. We need to think about this from a data perspective. There's 1,773 communities within Michigan, and the overwhelming majority of them have not opted in. They've opted out by default, many of them. But so I would just ask that this not be something that we go into quickly, that we take our time, and once you open up that door, it's hard to close it. So make sure that we do all our homework. That's it.
Okay.
Mr. Hamel?
Yes.
One more public comment too from Mr. Kolb.
And I have one too, please.
Who are we talking with?
Go ahead, Mr. Kolb.
Hi, it's actually Dale Kolb.
Oh, I'm sorry.
3791 Woodland Drive. I'm in Highland in Seven Harbors. We have had an ongoing situation with a residential growing house within 100 feet of my driveway with the constant smell. And my concern is there is no way for anything to happen in the township to enforce this or get us any help in our neighborhood to have that grower permit be removed. So what are you guys going to do to help any type of building permits or anything like that to be enforced, so that there's limitations to protect the township from any of this happening? Because once these buildings open, like everybody else is concerned about, we're not going to be able to close them down. We're not going to be able to enforce anything because they're going to be protected by the law.
Okay, so I'm not going to respond to that right now because there is some questions that'll probably bring that up. But I want to give somebody else an opportunity. So do you have anything else you'd like to add to that?
Again, my concern ongoing has been, the issues with residential growers. There needs to be some protection for neighborhoods so that this is not, it is a huge concern because the house in our neighborhood actually is a rental, and there were children living in the house where there's a grow area downstairs. There's all kinds of kids in this neighborhood, and we can't do anything to shut it down, even though we are a private neighborhood. So again, we've gone through millions of phone calls. I've done a petition in our neighborhood. I don't know what else I can do because of the limitations of enforcement. So I just really, really would appreciate you guys really taking the time to make sure this is what we want in our township, because it's not what we want in our neighborhood.
Okay, I thank you very much. And if you also would just send a quick email stating that you made a public comment and where your address and everything is, we're going to put that in the same file to use as documents. So
okay, thank you.
Who else wanted to say something?
Rick, this is Mary Pat.
Who?
Mary Pat now with.
Mary Pat, yes, okay.
Hey, Rick, thank you. Thanks for your time, and I appreciate the board's discussion on this. I think I've let you know how I feel about this issue, but I know it's up to you to make this decision as a board. I just want you to listen to everybody's input on this because I have real concerns about it too, and about our children and what it would mean to have it in Highland. I'm not sure I want that in Highland. I do appreciate the fact that if we do opt into this, though, at least you can set some limits on it. But I'm not sure we want to opt into this at all. And I think there's some confusion about medical marijuana and marijuana because on the agenda here, your memorandum, it just says opt in to marijuana facilities. And I think that once you opt in, it doesn't matter whether it's medicine or recreational. It's all one once you have the facilities there. So I do appreciate you letting people give their opinion on this and let everyone have an opinion so that it's for the good of Highland. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mary Pat. All right, Joe.
Question, I see Sean Bell is on the call here. Did he have any comments on that ordinance for Mrs. Colton?
I did. Thank you. I appreciate the chance to answer your question. I tried to pipe in there real quick. I believe if you're speaking of the one in 7 Harbor, the one that I'm aware of, the one that we do know, it did take some time for us to come up with a way to do it. We did find a way to do it. And if you do have problems out in your neighborhood, please feel free to contact my office. None of this happens quickly. It takes a process we have to follow through. There is a system in place. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen overnight like people think. But please feel free to reach out to my office. Again, we do have pretty much a system in place that we can handle these. That one in your neighborhood, I know did take an extended amount of time to get taken care of, but I believe if it's the one that I'm thinking of, that has been resolved and that there is no more growing in that house.
Let us know if that's not the case.
Yeah, please. As far as if it's the one I'm thinking of, I'm under the. I've been in the home after it's been all the plants have been removed. I actually did a visual on-site inspection of the property, and there were no longer any plants inside the home, so they have been removed. So unless there's a different one in your neighborhood, I know there are more. As I've had conversations with Mr. Hamill, and I don't mean to overstep my bounds here, but there are more grow sites and grow facilities and medical marijuana growers in our community than the average person would ever dream to imagine. There's dozens, if not hundreds of them. So if you think that it's not happening in our community, you're sadly mistaken, it is. So basically we need to be proactive in how are we going to deal with these facilities that are out there. That's what we're trying to come up with is what are the ways that we can do this? There's a lot of other aspects in your neighborhood that are concerned. We as the fire department, I'm the fire marshal of Highland Township, we run ordinance out of my department. We want to know where these facilities are as well. I've got a pretty good finger on the pulse in the community of many of them, not all. But again, I can tell you there are dozens and dozens of them people growing in their basements, in their pole barns, in their garages, everywhere. They're under the impression that they're clandestine. We don't want them to be clandestine. Some of these medical grow facilities, it's legal. So we want to work with them and be their partner in safety. There's one I know of that has two, I believe it's 700-pound CO2 cylinders chained to the side of their building. That's important for us to know as firefighters. We want to know if those pressure relief valves don't blow off, we want to know that those are there. So we want some type of a system in place where we can identify these grow sites and these facilities. So we are working behind the scenes as the township to address these as we come across them and find them. We're trying to encourage people to follow the proper procedures, get electrical permits, get licensed electricians to do the electrical work. Majority of the fires that I've investigated that were grow sites, 99.9% of them, 100% of them were electrical fires caused by inadequate or not appropriate electrical work being done. So we are trying as the township to try to get a grasp on this problem that is out there. But so you can say all day long you want is we don't want to adopt into this. We don't want this in our community. I'm sorry to tell you, it's here. Now we just have to figure out how to deal with it. And if anybody has any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to my office. Give me a call, drop me an email. I'll do my best to answer the question for you.
So this is the point that I was trying to make, is that we have to find ways that in 2008, when the law was opened up to allow for this marijuana, medical marijuana growing how come I can't remember this? I went through this earlier. Caregivers was so ineptly drawn up that now we're seeing what happens when you really don't understand what you're dealing with. It was fairly I would say overwhelmingly. It was pretty high vote levels. I think it was 65% were in favor of medical marijuana in Highland Township when we voted in 2008, and that's a big spread there. It's not 50-50 or it's a little bit more than that. So that happened, and now we're trying to figure out how to wind ourselves into a different direction. You don't want to take away some type of a medical possibilities for people in our community, but we do need to look at all the aspects. And I'm just throwing this out because this isn't necessarily what I believe. I just want people to understand. It is possible that if you do one thing, it might be able to help control another. But we have to look at that and figure out, is that possible? Is that something that can set up a standard to allow for control over these home grow operations or not? And maybe we don't want to deal with any of this, and everybody just puts their hands over their eyes, and we continue moving forward like we are, and we have to have the police and the fire departments deal with it. So that's why Sean is here. Sean's available for answering questions. So Lieutenant Snyder, I'm going to ask you to make a few comments about your feelings on what's happening in our community right now, and how you think it affects what might be an avenue or a better way to look at this. I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but.
Oh, that's fine. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, Supervisor, I appreciate it. From a perspective from the sheriff's office, I got to tell you, how we look at it is, we respect both sides, of the issues, the recreational and the medical. We do have a respect for the voters that voted that. As far as our personal feeling from the sheriff's office, we take a neutral stand on this. These are decisions the township board needs to make. But what I will say is some of the issues raised are great issues. I think a week ago, West Bloomfield they're having the same issues. There's an article on Channel 7. You may be able to search that about a week ago. It made the news. It's residents that are complaining about the odor, the smell, and this is just within a week. What I'd like to say is we're here as a resource for you. I don't have all the answers for you, but anything you need, I know with the state taking over the management and the regulation of this, it kind of takes us as a local law enforcement out of the equation as far as going in and inspecting these facilities, and it falls under the state police. They're the ones that are regulating that. But just know that, again, just like Sean Bell said, we're available for phone calls. We take these cases, any complaints we get on a case-by-case basis, and know that we're here as a resource for you.
All right. Gary, I kind of have some questions, with, and I guess maybe you could or might not be able to answer. Do you understand why Waterford decided to go this path? Do you know what brought it open for them to approve the medical marijuana facility and licensing?
No, I don't. I mean, other than it came up at a board meeting, it was presented by the supervisor, similar to as you're presenting it now, and the determination was made to craft an ordinance. And
the 30-page ordinance.
28, Joe.
I'm sorry, that's round numbers.
Yes, it's a long ordinance. I acknowledge that.
And I would encourage, I think what we could do is we could put this on and don't take it as a fear level for those that are opposed, but we could put this out there for anybody to look at. Actually, it's on Waterford's website, so you could look it up. But my question is there anything that, I'm looking at what happens, say we opt out and sometime in the near future, is there some way that somebody could come along and put us in a position where it could be a compromising position at a later date?
So let me just, are we still under public comment?
I don't know.
We have at least one more.
So who else has
I
one?
just don't know if you want to finish the public comment before I talk, or
I think let's just mix it up because it's really a discussion. So I'm not opposed to having the public weigh in on this. You're here, so we'll keep the door open. So go ahead, Gary.
Okay, so I mean, there's a distinction between medical and recreational. After the November 2018, when the voters in Michigan approved recreational, I think it was in June of 2019, the Township Board exercised its option to opt out of recreational marijuana. Right? On the medical marijuana side of the equation, it's just reversed. The township would have to affirmatively opt in to allow medical marijuana facilities. And that's under the Medical Marijuana Facility Licensing Act. And what you may do for medical, you can adopt an ordinance that authorizes one or more types of marijuana facilities. There's 5 of them. And you can limit the number of each type of facility. You can adopt other ordinances, including zoning regulations. And then that goes on to say certain things you can't do. In other words, you basically can't do things that conflict with the state statute. And those are what lawsuits are made of. So that's the posture you're in. If you do nothing, medical remains illegal. The 5 kinds of licenses that are allowed under the medical marijuana licensing statute, and for the life of me, I don't know why they call them different terms under recreational, but they do. But you have growers, and there's 3 classes of growers, and it's based on a number of plants. It's 500 or 1,000 or 1,500. You can have special grower licenses that end up being really large in terms of the number of plants. You get things called secure transporters. They store and transport marijuana. Safety compliance facilities, they test it. Processors, you can figure they process marijuana. And then the gem in the picture are the provisioning centers. Those are the equivalent of the retail outlet. So those are the 5 kinds of licenses. So again, any community that opts in, they can say which, if any of, if they're going to opt in, they're going to allow at least one of those kinds of licenses. And they can limit the number of each kind of license. And then it becomes a matter of how do you choose who gets a license. The state has a very comprehensive system set up to review applications by folks that want to, get into this business. They review the people's backgrounds and extensively, and then they have extensive requirements for the actual facilities. As long as a community's regulations don't conflict with those state regulations, it can impose its own, and or it can choose to simply rely on the state licensing. So the simplest approach, if you wanted to allow medical marijuana facilities, is you would say that we can have all 5 kinds of facilities, and here are the numbers of those kinds of facilities that we will allow in our township. And we're not going to impose any more regulations than what the state does. Most communities are going to do some of their own regulations, but the bigger issue becomes, if you limit the number, how do you pick the winners and losers? And everything I hear from around the state and municipal attorneys, in the Waterford context, I heard from lots of attorneys representing industry interests. Sore losers many times will sue the community, saying they should have gotten a license, and so they file a lawsuit. So, well, the only thing I've heard is that a system that is strictly random in terms of picking who gets the license, name out of a hat, if you will, is about the only system that people feel is fair and not subject to attack. The Waterford ordinance does not approach it that way. If you look through it, I mean, and there was no magic to the numbers. They allowed all 5 types of facilities, 2 of each type. And their system requires rather extensive application information. It calls for a review of all that information by various township personnel that file reports, and then all of that comes to the township board, who will eventually have to make decisions. That ordinance went live on January 4th of this year. Waterford, I think, received, I want to say, around 20 applications for the 2 provisioning center licenses. And so they'll eventually make a decision, and we'll see what happens. So recreational marijuana, although the township had the option to opt out and did, that statute gives the voters the right to petition to put it to a vote of the people as to whether facilities should be allowed, and if so, how many. That was not my understanding of the topic for discussion tonight. I can talk to it if you wish, but you've opted out of recreational marijuana. Never know when somebody might come in the door with enough petition signatures to say they want to put the subject of recreational marijuana on the ballot. And if that went on the ballot and was approved, you would have recreational facilities, and you could, in that situation, do ordinances to try to regulate. I can talk a long time or a short time.
I have a question for you, Gary.
Yes.
So on On the possibility of a ballot proposal, with the ballot proposal language, would they indicate the number of facilities that they wanted, that people would vote on? Yes, we want this many facilities, or no,
They can.
but they don't have to?
No, I don't have the recreational statute in front of me, but they can designate the number. But
Now,
the recreational statute, the big difference there is, I told you the 5 kind of facilities for medical, right? There's basically the same number of license types for recreational. Actually, there's a few more. And the recreational statute doesn't distinguish. If you get a voter approved ordinance in effect for X number of facilities, it's wide open in terms of there's no limits as to what kind they could be. So maybe, if somebody says, we want to have 5 recreational marijuana facilities in Highland Township, my reading of it is you can then have 5, I don't think they call them provisioning centers for recreational, I think they call them dispensaries, but you can have 5 of those. No ability to control which kind of facilities.
And then I have a second question in a slightly different direction. To your knowledge, if we were to pursue allowing medical marijuana facilities, is there any allowance to restrict home grow operations for caregivers as part of that, or would that still continue?
They are separate subjects. The so-called home grow operations are either happening by a qualifying patient growing their own, or they may be by a qualified primary caregiver who may have 12 plants for themselves and 12 plants for up to 5 patients for a total of 72. That is under the 2008 ballot proposal that originally gave us medical marijuana. When we talk about medical marijuana facility licensing, we're talking about, what I just outlined, and it's a separate law. As far as your question on controlling the home grow, if you had asked that question last year at this time, I would have told you that right now, no, we can't really do anything about that. Since then, last April, the Michigan Supreme Court ruled that communities may impose reasonable regulations on rights under the Medical Marijuana Act in terms of where caregivers' operations may be located. So there is some ability now, but the key is that word reasonable. Waterford's, in addition to their licensing ordinance, they adopted a companion zoning ordinance amendment that said where these different types of medical facilities could be located, industrial zones, commercial zones, what have you, but also with respect to caregivers under the Medical Marijuana Act, recognize them as a permitted home occupation, but with some fairly tight restrictions. And they also went to the extent of saying groups of caregivers could be located in an industrial district. They don't need a license through the state. They just, in an effort to encourage caregivers to take their operations to the more intense zoning districts. That ordinance also just took effect on January 4th. So not sure if people will take advantage of it, but the idea behind it was to provide some avenue to get the growing operations out of the neighborhoods.
Now, that doesn't.
Gary, this is Scott Green. So can I ask you a question about that, of kind of follow-on question? So if you're the patient, are you allowed still to have a grow operation in your home, and it's kind of unregulated, I guess, that may be a poor term, but versus a caregiver where they can have up to 72 plants.
Patient can have 12 plants of their own.
And there's no way for the township to regulate that.
No, it's legal.
That's
recreational is what it boils down to.
Well, that's medical.
I'm not going to be able to say, no, there's no way to regulate it. I mean, there may be a way to, put some restrictions on it, but to out and out prohibit it, no.
Yeah. Okay. I just,
on my watch.
it's important to understand that there's the commercialization of it, right? Which is the stores and the growers and all that kind of stuff where they're doing everything for a profit, which we've opted out in medical because we didn't do anything. We've opted out from recreational because we chose to opt out because we have to do that to opt out. And then, person growing their own, though, that's a whole nother caveat, right? That's a whole nother layer of laws that control that.
And that would be a very tough one to regulate, in my opinion. The caregiver takes it up a notch to an arguably a commercial operation of sorts.
Right.
But simply a person that is a qualifying patient that is fully compliant with the Medical Marijuana Act and the rules under that, I think that a community would be hard pressed to put too many restrictions on that.
Right. Okay.
Rick?
Yeah.
Jordan Niduk has been patiently waiting for a chance to speak as well.
Go ahead.
Jordan.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for the time. I'll make it quick because I know you're running late. Jordan Niduk, 575 East Baker in Highland. I just would like to remind the board, and just speaking as an individual, just as a citizen, that whatever your decision is for on this, and I appreciate taking the data and the science into consideration, but as the discussion, as Sean has brought up, and as Scott as well, you're just talking about the facilities themselves. You're not restricting people access to their medicine if they are patients. You're not restricting their home access. It's just that retail establishment, and especially making sure that, like we said, that I would think about the advertising and the promotions and all of that goes along with it, not just the building and the licensing, as with your the dangers of the fire departments and all that moving forward, making sure that all of their concerns are being heard as well before a decision is made. Like one of the other citizens had said, once these decisions have been made, it's hard to backtrack. And once you open the door for medical, then the recreation people are going to start knocking on your doors as well, because they are two different laws and two different situations, as your attorney has spoken to. So I would just remind everyone to try to keep the data as your number one decision. And I'll be sending a follow-up email with some supportive resources for you as well.
Thank you, Jordan, very much. I appreciate it.
Mr. Hamill, may I?
Yes.
So following up on that comment, yes, the medical marijuana facility licensing and recreational are two separate animals. And yet in the last month, I've seen reported case decisions that identify a link between the two. If somebody has a medical marijuana facility license in a community, and that community later has recreational facility licensing, the way I read these decisions, and I think they were based on the administrative rules, the people holding those medical marijuana facility licenses would have preference to get a recreational license. So if you really want to know more, I can provide it in more detail. But the point is, if you have medical facilities, you've decided to open that door, maybe the next thing you see is the petition come in to have recreational facilities. And you can't stop that. If it's got the right number of signatures, you have to put it on the next regular election ballot, whenever that works out to be. And if it passes, you're going to have recreational facilities. And the folks that got the medical ones will then be on track. It's my understanding that in the Waterford ordinance scheme, each license applied for had a $5,000 application fee. It is my understanding that for the 2 provisioning center licenses, a single company submitted 5 applications. In other words, they had 5 different locations in mind. So this is a big money industry from everything I can tell. And, you know, you've heard people urge caution and so forth. Once you decide to go down the path, your legal bills will go up. I will tell you that for sure, unless you just adopt a hands-off kind of an ordinance. We're going to allow medical licenses. We'll have this many of each kind. As long as somebody gets a state license, you know, they can open up shop, and we'll just pull the names out of the hat to decide who gets to do that. You know, absent that kind of a laissez-faire approach, you will have companies, because of the stakes, that will, you know, challenge just about everything you do and each thing you try to do. So but it does provide a benefit. You know, if you have medical marijuana available at a licensed facility, maybe primary caregivers don't need to be growing as much in the neighborhoods. Maybe patients would rather go to a licensed establishment rather than dealing with someone that's growing it in their house. I, you know, don't know about those things. There's a lot of factors to consider, but I'm going to be, so I can talk a lot, but
I think that unless somebody else has any other questions, you know, for Gary, then we could kind of point directions. I think that we spilled out an awful lot of information there, and I think that our brains need to. The whole idea was to listen to some of this and so that everybody hears it at the same time and hopefully hears similar things.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Is there anyone else who has public comment? We should not leave anybody hanging there if they have public comment.
There's at least 2 and a follow-up from Mr. Green. So Ms. Stoke, go ahead.
Yes, this is Monica Stoka. I have a question more on the financial side of it. I know that there are some significant tax revenue upsides to some of these businesses being in communities, in addition to filling a need for medical help for our community. Do we have any kind of estimates in terms of not only the tax revenue that could potentially come into the township, but also the overall positive economic impact in our community, and job estimates of the kind of job growth that we might have in our community?
For a medical marijuana licensed facility, the maximum annual fee that township can charge is $5,000.
For the application?
And an application fee of $5,000 and an annual recurring fee of $5,000.
So there's no percentage kind of thing set up where a certain percentage of the revenues would come to the locals?
Yeah, there's
not for medical.
Yeah.
Not for medical. I don't have my recreational statute with me, so I don't want to talk out of school on that.
Gary, that has to be reasonable charges, right? I mean, it's up to a maximum of 5,000, but there's some caveats inside that, right?
My recollection is the annual fee that may be charged for a medical marijuana license is up to $5,000.
Yeah, there's a little more to it than that, but yeah,
Well,
it
there
can
may
be
be
up to
more
that.
to it, but again, this is an industry that doesn't seem to be shy about spending the money.
Yeah.
How about job growth? Are there estimates in terms of what jobs might become available in our community?
I don't have any information on that topic.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Ms. D'Ambrosi had a question as well. I don't know if yep, she's still there.
Rose?
Hi, no, I forgot what I was going to ask. We've gone over this so many times. Gary, you talked about limiting the number of facilities. Say we say yes to opting in if the board decides that. How, is that something where the board also has to say how, like, for example, you know, we can only have so many liquor licenses in our area. Is that the same kind of thing? You can only, or would we be, the board would decide how many?
For medical, the board can decide which kinds of licenses, and for which each kind of those 5 licenses that it approves, it can decide how many will be allowed.
Okay.
Your other question, Ms. D'Ambrosi, was that can the township be liable for misuse because they've opted in?
Oh, thanks, Justin. Yes, I was, Gary, you brought up, you know, the legal fees going up and stuff. So say, for example, somebody illegally uses the site, like in other words, they don't have a health card and they buy it and something happens. Is the township liable in any kind of misuse situation?
Businesses.
So the question is, if the township has approved provisioning center licenses and at a provisioning center, some violation of the law occurs, is the township liable?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
I mean, that doesn't mean somebody wouldn't sue us, but I would be comfortable with that lawsuit being dismissed.
I have a question. What kind of responsibilities does the township have if we opt into things like this, as far as like inspections and
Only as many as you put in the ordinance.
okay, so it's just directed by the ordinance.
Right. You know, you can exercise little authority or as much as, you know, you want to push the edge on. Again, it's a very comprehensive state regulatory scheme that's already set up. But sometimes state regulatory schemes look very comprehensive on paper, and it's in the application that they can sometimes fall short. I mean, I've seen that in numerous situations. I'm not going to bore you with examples. Those are war stories. But
Anybody else, Justin?
Not that's appearing in chat, no.
Okay, I'm gonna call an end to the public comment end, and I think that we've and I appreciate everybody that's come on board to discuss this. And I think what we'll do is we'll call an end to this discussion, and anybody that has any questions, or if you run across any data or information that could be pertinent in either direction, would you please make sure that you, well, I'll say pass it to Tammy through some type of an email or drop it off in a folder. We don't really care how you get it to us, but anything would be helpful on that to help further it along. And on that note, I think what we'll do is, and Gary, you can correct me if I need to do something different, but I think that the discussion, we're not going to set another date at this point in time, because I think I'd like to gather as many questions from any individuals in the community. I'd also like to put out a call to questions in the newspaper. I think that would be a way to open the door up for more people to understand. I think Mary Pat sent me an email. Trish Pilchowski sent an email that said, you know, we need to get the public more aware of this. And I think that's what we need to do, is go on an awareness campaign first and get some feedback in every direction we possibly can. And then we can kind of put a committee together to review what's there. And then we can decide when we will bring it up again. But it does need to have some type of a resolution. We can't just we pulled it out in the open. I pulled it out in the open, however you want to put it. So we need to have at least some type of resolution so that those that have come to us over the past few years can have some type of an idea that they could be looking somewhere else to do their business or look forward to doing business in Highland. So it's a big step and a lot of information we need to digest and a lot of people we need to have weigh in. And so on that note, I think we'll call an end to that discussion. So Gary, do we need a motion or anything for that or not?
No, you can just move to postpone further discussion to a future meeting date set by the supervisor.
Okay, that'll be my motion.
Support.
Okay.
Cooper.
All right, so let's vote on that.
All right. Mrs. Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Mr. Howe,
How? Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Cooper, yes.
Mrs. Frederick,
Frederick, yes.
Clerk Flowers votes yes. Mr. Salvia,
Salvia, yes.
Mr. Hamel,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right, so on that note, we'll call the meeting adjourned. And I'd like to thank everybody for getting involved in this. I know it doesn't take much to get the pot stirred up, so to speak, and keep that on as a joke. And I just want everybody to know that I'm not doing this to cause any type of an issue in the community. It's just a question that needs an answer for a lot of people that have been coming to us. And I would say there's probably over 100 that have approached us on this. And I think it's fair to give an answer one way or another. So further date and time, thank you everybody for coming. Gary, thank for your knowledge on this and everybody that had great questions. I appreciate it. So.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Take care.
Yeah. Good night, all.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.